I saw was, and it runs counter to some business books that you'll see, was people pursuing their passion, was a young person pursuing their passion. And the passion sometimes the passion made good business sense, but very often it didn't. And so that was I think a common success that other people made and that I made twice in my career, and that both ended in failure.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you join us again on our Fearless Founders Club journey. And today, particularly, I'm so grateful that my dear friend and neighbor, Scott Frazier, has joined us. Ike and I are very excited. We've already talked about Scott and his family, who have been very successful. Since 1995, he has created this Frazier Group VC, and has invested in so many successful companies, and ultimately has created a beautiful brand of being a quality investor within the Silicon Slopes, Rocky Mountains area. Scott and his team have invested in over 150 ventures, from names that you may or may not remember: Kizik, Central Logic, Omniture, Skull Candy, My Family, Domo, a True Hearing, Stance, Workfront, amongst many. And having a Harvard MBA as well as an undergrad in econ, Scott's got a very strong mind and has seen so many businesses come and go. But he has an uncanny knack for investing in the right ones. And we're going to explore all of the good things that he's learned from his journey. He's also managed 4 of the portfolio companies himself and sold them combined for over $450 million. So Scott really knows what he's talking about. Scott, we're really happy to have you join us. Thank you for this conversation. And Ike already wrestled me and said, I want to ask the first question. So Ike, go ask.
So Scott, thanks for being on the show. I'm curious if over the years you developed like certain criteria to how to pick a great company to invest in. Like, is it the founder? Is it the problems they solve? Like, how do you approach it? Maybe you have a list, or maybe it's so intuitive to you now. You just know.
Oh, well, in the first decade of my investing, I invested in very early stage companies. So when I was doing that, it was primarily the founder. I remember my good friend who was a professor at BYU, his name is Joe Olivier, came to me and said, Scott, the smartest student I've ever had, and he had taught there for, 25 years. He said, the smartest student I've ever had is starting a business. Let's invest in it. And that was probably the best investment I ever made in those early years. So with that particular one, it was all on the character and the abilities of the founder. It was his Josh James, who's well known in Utah, and what he had founded turned into Omniture. So that's certainly a good way to do it, based on the people that you're doing. I've always invested based on the idea. Some businesses just strike you as something that resonates. You believe it's going to be successful. I've failed on a great many of those as well, and I've realized that sometimes things that are exciting to me are nobody else is going to buy. The first business I ever started when I was very young was a poison control first aid kit. So I had, I don't know how many, 5 little kids running around my own house, getting into stuff. And we were always afraid they were going to drink this or that. And it seemed like a a kit that had antidotes for every possible poison that you have in your house was a great idea, but nobody bought it. There just weren't very many families that had 5 kids running around the house, I guess. Or anyway, so that was a bad idea. I've invested over the years in, or during those early years at least, in several, what do you call it, sort of anti-pornography programs on your computer. I forget the word for it, but to several companies that did that, and to one that modified the videos that you watch to remove
I see.
remove objectionable things, and all of those failed. Again, it was something that seemed very important to me. It seemed like a lot of people should want this, but evidently they didn't. So I don't know. So I didn't do really great on just saying what would I buy. In later years, as I've accumulated some wealth, there are a lot of things that I would buy, but nobody else wants to buy, or maybe it's too expensive or something. So I think that's been a significant failure for me, is trying to say what would I buy. In later years, we invest in later stage businesses. So the metric that always proves worthwhile is, what are their revenues? How many people are buying their product? How much are they paying? And that's a tried and true metric. But
just follow, like, so is the later stages, is it more about the team that can execute, so that they're not only generating revenue but also making sure there's no like churn, or the product is keeping up with is it more like a team effort?
Yeah, good point. The team, at that point, you expect them to have a team, not just an individual founder or even a pair of partners in those later stage businesses. So, well, it's definitely the revenue and the team. And the big question that we ask is, can they establish a sustainable competitive advantage? Because a lot of companies that can generate some revenue and even have a good team, when you look at it, you say, well, they've got 4 competitors now who are equally well funded. I don't believe they can maintain a competitive advantage, and then we do not invest when we conclude that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I have to ask this and jump in. With all that you've done, if you were, and I absolutely believe you have a brilliant record here in your investing hit rate. If you were to say, of all the investments you've made, not the dollar amounts, but the quantity of entities you put it in versus those that succeeded, would you say it's a 70-30, 70 lost 30 in the quantity of organizations that succeeded? What number would you say?
Boy, that is a great question. And, I should mention, I also co-founded the Utah Angels. And at our peak, we had 20 partners. So I can share with you some, I don't really have statistics, but some numbers based on my own investing, but 19 other investors. In the early years, certainly the first decade or 15 years of my investing, about 80% of the companies I invested in failed. And isn't that terrible? In fact, when I would try to discourage others from becoming angel investors, I'd share with them, well, about 80% of my companies have failed, and my partners generally have not done so well themselves. And in fact, at one point when I was just in college, thinking about whether to be a doctor or a business person, my uncle, who was a successful businessman, told me, Scott, the best thing about business, if you can be right half the time, you're going to be hugely successful. And I knew that would not be the case with a doctor. If I was only right half the time, I would be a poor doctor. But in business, I truly believe that is true. What made the difference among the different angel investors that I was associated with was I was fortunate to have enough capital going in that I could invest in 50 businesses during that stage. And yes, only 10 of them succeeded. They did yield a nice return, but the other factor that made it possible for me to succeed was, while 80% of my businesses failed, 80% of my money went into businesses that succeeded. So basically my strategy was invest in a lot of businesses. With those that thrive, put more money in, more money, buy out early shareholders, participate in later financings. And so overall it worked well, but yeah, probably 80% failed.
Wow, fascinating. To hear that. You
Yeah,
then you then put into the few that are still in the race, and you keep investing in them.
Yeah. Keep investing in those, put more and more in. Don't put too much into the early stage businesses until you see that they actually begin to succeed.
How do you overcome the emotional loyalty that you have with all of these people? All of these birds are coming up to you, feed me, we're the best, and you get an emotional pull, and sorry, when this is a business decision. How do you go about saying no when you've already made a commitment? The emotional connection.
You do not need me as a guest. You know all the answers. Just the nature of your question is so profound, and the obvious answer is, yeah, you're going to fail if you feed the losers. You're going to fail, and you know the answer. It's part of your question. You just have to avoid doing it. I think the thing that helped me was I learned fairly quickly never to invest in a business if I was the only investor. And partly it was because a group makes a better decision than an individual. But the other part of it deals with your question. If I'm the only investor, there is tremendous success or tremendous pressure to bail them out when they're in trouble. But if I'm only one of 5 investors, then the pressure is not that great on me individually, and I can easily just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't put in more money at this point. So one thing that helped me was to always be a part of a group that invested, and that limited the pressure on me.
Wow, isn't that cool?
Amazing. Yes, amazing. Yeah. So
I've done something that made it so I can't hear you. Let me try to figure out what it is.
Okay.
We can hear
I think
you well.
it went all of a sudden to my headphones.
Hello?
You want to talk? I can hear you through my headphones. I don't like wearing them, so if I can figure a way to turn it back.
And you've been coming through loud and clear the whole time, just so you know. So
yeah. No, it was just that I could not hear you during the last short while.
If possible, turn off your headphones if there's a button for it, and that'll take care of it.
That's a good idea. It's a great idea.
Ike,
I know you got some questions too, because
you're able to.
I used to be the CTO. I'm a technical founder, so I better be able to help.
A failure. Oh, I found a button.
Cool.
Okay. Now that didn't work. Now it's on.
It might take a while.
Now it's off.
It might take a few seconds to switch.
Wait.
I am so sorry.
It's okay. How about now? Oh, okay.
Now it's still through the headphones.
Just keep it on. You look cool.
I'll keep them on. It'll hide my bald spot.
There you go.
Cool.
Only now I have music also coming through the headphones.
It's too much technology happening, I think.
Yeah, it's too much technology. Tell you the truth, this is why I needed my son here, not so much to add to the answers, but to
we won't tell him that. We won't tell him that.
To run the technology. Yeah, don't tell him that. Okay. Anyway, I can hear you now. You can hear me, so we're
Okay,
good.
cool. So
Okay.
how about this? Let's switch the topic just a little bit. Can you talk about maybe the mistakes you've seen that that maybe we can share here to first-time founders that they can avoid? You know, I sometimes also phrase these questions like, have you seen any different behavior between the first-time founder versus second-time founders? Maybe that
Oh.
is a different way of thinking about it. But any way that we can help them avoid these mistakes, whether it's business decision or a product or go to market or emotional, any mistakes that we can help them avoid.
Well, I can think of a couple. I don't have an exhaustive list. That would be a
Yeah,
great thing that over the years I should have put together a list of that, but I have not.
maybe you'll come up with a book after this the podcast.
Maybe so. You know, two things that come to mind immediately are find a great partner. So many of the successful businesses that we have funded have had, you know, not just a single entrepreneur but a pair. Uh, and and in the four successful businesses that I've operated, uh, I'm trying to think with all of them. Certainly with the three that are most successful, I had a partner, and that partner was absolutely critical. I I often looked at the business and said, my partner is doing more than I am. I need to do better. He's better than I am. He's contributing more. Why does he need me? And I would talk to him about it and express that to him. And they were always kind and would say, no, Scott, I've never doubted you in the least. You're contributing a lot. Let's keep this going. But having a great partner is just wonderful. It's not a business, but a quick story. Early in our marriage, my wife and I were tasked with putting on a play, and for a church group, and and the kids were horrible kids that we had in this play. They really were. I mean, I've seen a lot of kids, and I've had kids of my own, and they were just tough kids. And I would go home thinking, this is the end of it. I'm never going to be back here again. But my wife would still have energy, and she would say, no, let's keep doing it. And then the next week it would be the opposite, where she would have energy. She would be down in the dumps, and I would have the energy. And I think the same thing works in business. It just 1 + 1 is not 2; it's 3 or 4 or 5 when you have the right partner. The other common failure that I saw was, and it runs counter to some business books that you'll see, was people pursuing their passion. Was a young person pursuing their passion, and the passion sometimes the passion made good business sense, but very often it didn't. And so that was I think a common success that other people made, and that I made twice in my career, and that both ended in failure. I'm sure there's a great many other things, but those are two that come to mind.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think like to me, like the passion needs to be able to sustain you and give you the grit, but the business itself has to be like people has a need for it. You have to be able to build what they need and get to them, and then the challenge of the competitors, and then making a name for yourself. It's all business side of it beyond the passion. I think the passion just drives because you have to have the grit for a long time, right? To be able to thrive, you have to survive, and then maybe I think, in my opinion, there's a need for a little bit both.
Oh yeah, there's tremendous need for that passion. I guess I was just trying to say that the thing that you're passionate about, it's great if it's the business, but if it's some particular product or service anyway.
Yeah.
Good question.
I'm dying to ask this of our professional investor, why did you go into investing as the main income stream, hobby? Why not run businesses, turn them over, do it again? Why investing? Why did that whole concept start out for the Frazier Group, and how you started it?
Well, I would have to say it was a mistake. I built up a business with a wonderful partner in Minnesota. We sold the business. I had today it wouldn't be a large amount of money, but what in those days was a large amount of money, and moved to Utah. And I should have started another business. I was 40 years old. So, I mean, I thought I was old at the time, but now I think I was young. And I had a bunch of capital, and I had a lot of energy, and I knew I should have started another business. That would have made the most sense. But I don't know if it was laziness on my part. It was probably partly laziness. I probably thought, well, I can just go on the coattails of these other people that are doing great things. And so part of it was probably the laziness, but part of it was, you just talk to people, and there's so many what seem like great ideas out there that you can get excited. You can spend a week talking to a dozen people, and you got 5 ideas that seem like they're earth shattering, and I can just put my money in there. Virtually all of my Utah Angel partners, 20 of us, did the same thing. They all built a business, and then they all became angel investors. And it was just, frankly, quite a waste of talent. And generally, we were not all that good at investing. It took a dozen years to get good at it. And so it was a mistake to do that. And I now I see so many, people that sell a successful business, and they'll start another business, and they do great. So I think a lot of people nowadays are not falling in that trap that I did.
I think you sell yourself short.
I agree.
But we understand the journey and how it happened. Thank you. You answered the question. How did you get into being an investor?
Thank you for being raw and real. Thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely. That's lovely. And at this stage, you've seen enough of these first-time founders as they struggle through the fundraising, through all of that. Would you actually tell people, go look for investors, or would you dissuade people and say, if you can, try to make it out on your own, and it's okay to get rich slowly?
Oh, that I think that is absolutely great advice, Benoy. Get rich slowly. I put together a little talk that I gave on 3 paths to building your own successful business. And now that I think about it, none of the 3 involved taking other people's money initially. One that I identified is if there's a business in your family, if your father or mother have a business, well, consider taking that on, building it up, growing it. I've seen so many successes where people have joined the family business, and frankly, it's easy because the father or the mother wants you to be successful. They want to introduce you to all of their connections. They want to teach you everything they know. In my graduate school program, there were 80 of us together. It was called a section, and there were probably 10 of those 80 whose families had successful family businesses. And I talked to all of them, and none of them wanted to go into the family business. Either they would say, yeah, it's successful, but but I want to build something of my own. I want to be successful myself, not follow on my father's coattails. Or they would say, well, it's an old-fashioned business. It's this, it's whatever, making buggy whips, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the new exciting stuff. But in the end, I'll bet 8 of the 10 did move into the family business, and they were successful at it. The buggy, I don't remember now what the buggy whip company was, but the equivalent of buggy whips, he transformed it into a modern business. But it was a whole lot easier to transform the old family business into the modern thing than it would have been to build something from scratch. Another path that I've seen a lot of successful individuals follow is to join a medium or small successful business and learn it. And then I've told them, you're going to come across in 3 or 4 years with that business, you're going to come across 3 or 4 offshoots from that business that you've joined that can make for a successful business. And you're far better off. At that point, you're going to know that offshoot well. You're going to be far better off than if you just sit around and think, what can I start? And then, a third path that I've seen that was successful is start with an easy, low risk business and then pivot into something successful. Josh and just so many stories about doing that. One of them is Jonathan Coons, college student, found a supplier and started selling contact lenses to his friends in college. And that takes no capital, and frankly, it takes no expertise, just takes a little bit of work and some good sales effort. And then he morphed that into 800 contacts, and he took other people's money, and he built it into a great successful business. But he started out with something that was just easy peasy to do, didn't require capital, didn't require great expertise, and then through a pivot. And Josh and John, who eventually ended up with Omniture, they started out just building websites, for little bitty websites for people. And it took a little programming knowledge, but didn't take any outside money. Then they pivoted 3 times before they ended up with Omniture. But the path was a lot easier, I think, for a young person than biting off too much initially.
I couldn't agree more. Nowadays, and you've seen this, along with the social media onslaught of easy money and quick fame and handsome and pretty people, it's like, gotta get there now. I gotta find out whatever it is they're doing, do it now. When instead, it's the fundamentals of a business that allows you to gain some movement, then you can at least tack and find your way to the right combination that is lucrative. But it's almost like, and I have a son who thinks this, he goes, I got to find the perfect job. I've got to find the perfect role. And they'll never start. They won't start. They're paralyzed because they're overthinking too much.
Yeah, I didn't start out with the perfect job or the perfect role. I pivoted and failed and pivoted again and ended up with something good. Hey, my son Kendall and partner has joined us here. Should he sign in himself or try to come into my picture?
Yeah, just use the same link.
Have him use the same link, and then he can join in with his own camera view and his own mic. That way, we'll have another window.
Okay. Let's see, Kendall. I'm going to forward this to you. Forward.
This is perfect. I'm loving this conversation. It's great.
Nice, yeah.
It's good stuff, Ike.
Awesome.
Okay, Kendall, I just forwarded you the link. Did I lose you, Benoy? I think I did.
I'm here. I'm still here.
You're there. Okay. I just have to open the right window. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
We can see you and hear you. You are as you were from before. Your handsome self.
Well, Kendall will be on shortly then.
That's fine. That's lovely. And what is he in the birth order of your 5?
Kendall is child number 4 and son number 3. And actually, in the Frazier business here, we have 6 of the children involved in it. And it's exciting.
Wow. See, you implemented what you said. Take over the family business.
Yeah,
Continue
yeah,
doing it, right?
yeah, yeah. And they're the one who's been with me the longest, David, has been with me 13 years. He's better at it than I am. Kendall is on his way to. He's been here probably 4 years, and he's already good at it.
Nice.
Well, look at the combined gene pool of mom and dad and all the business acumen that comes with it too. So that's great. That's lovely. You can just bring him in whenever you see him.
Yeah, as soon as I see him, I'll add him to the screen.
He went into the conference room, so he shouldn't be long.
No problem.
He probably did what I did. I wasn't using the right browser and had to find a different browser.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't like Safari, if I remember. So I had to change that too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Are there questions we're not asking that would be relevant from your perspective?
Oh, let's see. I don't know. You're asking all the right questions, I think. Find a great partner.
I remember one thing. I was talking to Jeff Curl. I'm sure you know him. He said that he never realized sourcing deals would be so hard, because like just you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right one. Like he was one of his aha moments, I guess, that he didn't.
Oh, as an investor, sourcing deals was difficult. Yeah, no, it is. Kendall joined us. What do you think about sourcing deals, Kendall?
Hey guys, good to.
Hi, Kendall. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much.
Good to see you again.
Kendall, tell us a little bit about yourself, and like maybe also what kind of deals that makes you busy these days.
Oh yes. So,
and before you start, the goal of the podcast is to help first-time founders. We've all been there. We're trying to give back to the community. We think our founders, all the founders, are fearless beasts. We love them, but at the same time, we also think they have lots of lessons to learn, and we're just trying to help them with some of those lessons. So that's the frame of the podcast.
Nice. Well, I've worked at several startups, and I founded one of my own. So I graduated 2008. I was a very early employee at what is now Lendio, and I was also a very early employee at what is now nav.com. So those are both in fintech. Mm-hmm. So I'm still good friends with both the founders are still there, Brock at Lendio and Levi at Nav. Then I started my own software company, employeereferrals.com, and wrapped that up about 4 years ago. It was a modest success, got up to several million in ARR, but we've wrapped that up, and I came home to the family venture capital firm after that, Frazier Group. So I've been here 4 years doing venture capital since then, and I work a lot on sourcing. So,
cool. Hey Kendall, it occurs to me that both Nav and Lendio had a number of pivots before their final success. Can you address that, the role of pivots in a company's life cycle, maybe, or specifically how those two pivoted?
Yeah,
I love it how Scott became a host immediately, just like that. I love it.
I think it's easier to be a host. I want to be a host.
He's taken over.
Love
it. They both had a number of pivots. When I joined Funding Universe, we were a company that was focused on pitching events for founders. So we hosted these events called Speed Pitch. And in those days, the dynamic was a little different. So the entrepreneurs had to pay to pitch angel investors. So the investors would come for free and the entrepreneurs would pay. That seems a little backwards these days.
Wow.
It was kind of, there weren't very many, nobody was funding pre-seed ventures back there. It was hard for people to get in front of angel investors. So we had this model where we would literally just host events and investors and entrepreneurs would come together. And it wasn't a very good business model. It wasn't super scalable. It was just in Utah. So we figured out pretty quickly that just wasn't a very good business model. So Funding Universe joined together with a company that was focused on helping small businesses get loans. So we kind of pivoted from a company that was helping tech startups meet angel investors to a company that was helping all kinds of small businesses get the loans that they needed to grow. And that was an awesome pivot because all of a sudden we could help laundromats, we could help service companies, we could help all kinds of businesses get the loans that they needed. So it was much better. It was all done online, so it was scalable. And that kind of grew into Lendio. And then early on there, so Levi was one of the co-founders at Funding Universe, essentially, and he broke off to start nav.com. And his focus wasn't on helping people find loans, it was on helping them build credit. So the first iteration of the company was focused on repairing your credit. It was focused on credit repair. And we had this process where we would dispute bad credit with creditors and get those cleared up. But that wasn't scalable because the way you approach it is different for every company. So it wasn't a very scalable, it required a lot of work. It was there was a lot of service involved in it. And so Levi pivoted the company away from doing credit repair and into a company that would just build credit. So they would find your information on your business credit and also your personal credit. And then they offered a suite of services where everything you paid into NAV would help build your credit. So they'd give you essentially a card that you would expense all your business expenses to. And it was somehow, I had left about the time of the pivot. Somehow you would pay money into this card and they would report back to the credit agencies and count that as credit building. And they would also information on your personal business credit. So that was a good pivot. So yeah, I think most of the businesses we've seen that have been successful, trying to think how to apply this more broadly, you'll see the smartest founders aren't afraid to admit they were wrong about their initial business idea and pivot as they learn more. And they're not afraid of what the initial investors think. They're not afraid about what their employees think or the clients. When they need to pivot, I really admire those founders who just aren't afraid to just show up one day and say, hey, we thought this was great, but it's not so great. We failed. We're going to pivot and try something new. And anyway, I think founders are afraid of what the perception will be, but investors are just happy. We love to see it when people pivot. So
I want to talk about two founders who pivoted. One was my major mentor. So this was now 35 years ago. Well, it started 50 years ago. A man named Larry Garatoni built a nursing home. And when I'd say built, he held the hammer, he held the saw, he built it from the ground up. And then he built a few other nursing homes. But then the nursing home reimbursement changed and it was no longer a good business. So he observed that the people who did the therapy in nursing homes. Physical therapists, occupational speech therapists seem to drive nice cars. And so he bought a little company that did the rehabilitation services for nursing homes. And he noticed that the drug reps who came in and provided the drugs that the nursing home patients needed, that they seemed to wear Rolex watches and they seemed to be doing well. So he bought a little institutional pharmacy that sold drugs to nursing homes. And he noticed that the people who provided the software for nursing homes provided very bad software, but they seemed to, there was only one company that did it and they only provided bad software. So he bought that little company that provided the bad software, and eventually he made far, far more money and had far more success with providing therapy and drugs and software, not only to his nursing homes, but to a broad swath of the industry. So pivots was what made it work for him. Another example, a wonderful example of pivots, I invested in a company that sold discounted eyeglasses through your health plan. So you could, this was a benefit your health plan would offer. You could get cheap eyeglasses through your health plan. I invested some money, and then only a month after I invested, he came to me and said, look, Scott, we need to, eyeglasses is kind of passe. We need to do contact lenses. So he started to do contact lenses. That was better than eyeglasses. But then 800 Contacts came in, and they had an even better way to sell discounted contact lenses. And so he said, look, contact lenses, forget that. 800 Contacts does it better. We're going to sell LASIK because LASIK is the new thing. And so we sold LASIK through the health plan. And then we sold cosmetic surgery and we sold cosmetic dentistry. And it was just one after another. Initially, he pivoted away from a couple of things, but later he just added other products through the same channel. And he was a huge success. I think
these are great. I
critical.
love it. You know, as you guys talking, I have goosebumps, because I know when I had my business, I was so emotional that like I built it from the brick from the ground up as well. Like it is so hard to disconnect yourself from the business, from your baby. I have 2 kids. I always said I had 3 kids at the time, and I've never heard, Benoy, have you heard like an investor say, we love it when the founder is pivoting? Because I always thought that this is probably a story that I created in my mind, that, oh my God, how am I going to tell I'm pivoting to my investors? Like it was like,
It's defeat. It means that you
yes.
Means that you failed. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it does. Which also, I think another lesson from that, when you do take money from investors, you might be tempted to only take as much as you're going to need, thinking, well, I don't want to dilute myself. But so many times you need to pivot and you need that supply. You've already spent, $1 million on the thing that failed, but you took 2 million. You got $1 million left. So go do your pivot. Spend the second $1 million.
Gotcha. That's a great advice.
Take more money than you need.
Well put. Back to Kendall, because you were talking about you're in charge of sourcing, and I could have asked that question just as you were coming on. What's the difficulty in sourcing that you're experiencing that you wish founders would just do a few things and they would be that much more attractive? What's the difficulty as an investor that you're facing that you wish founders would do differently to make them available, accessible?
Make them more accessible and available.
Hey, can I talk while Kendall's thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. I once worked only for a month, but I once worked for a very disreputable investment firm. And the way that they sold their services to clients was you produced 1,000 letters. Let's make the math easy. You produce 3,000 letters. You send out 3,000 letters. A thousand of them say buy XYZ stock. So you find a stock that is in a situation where it's either going to go way up or it's going to go way down. You know, maybe it's about to be sold or merged or something. And you send 1,000 letters saying buy XYZ stock. It's a great buy. And you send 1,000 letters saying short the same XYZ stock. And then it either fails or it succeeds. And you got 1,000 people that think you're smart. And then you do the same thing again with the second company. You know, half your letters say buy, half say short. And then you've got people you got 500 people for whom you've been right 2 times. And then you say, look, advice you got to now pay to get my advice. I think as a founder of a company, I would do something similar, but it's reputable. I would when I start a company, I would send emails, since we don't send letters anymore, to every investor in the state of Utah and say, I'm starting this company. We are going to do this XYZ in the next 3 months. And then in 3 months, I would send them a second email saying, I told you 3 months ago we would do XYZ. We did that. Here's the proof. Our next milestone is I'm going to sign up blah, blah, blah company as a customer. And then now music started playing. Now you send them a letter a month later saying, we did what we said we would do twice. It's now time for us to take money. Let me come and meet with you. So anyway, it'd be a possibility. I'd consider doing that. Tell them what you're going to do. And once you tell them
Yep.
I would definitely do that. Like Scott said, I mean, just in Utah, there are now 25 venture capital funds. Our friend John Bradshaw has a list. He showed it to me the other day. So there's quite a few funds out there. So you can just Google and ask who they are and just do cold outreach. And I would do that. My advice to founders is that I see quite a few companies that are good, fundable companies, but they don't fit what the Fraziers are going to invest in. And it could be because they're not a software as a service company, or it could be that they're a consumer product and we don't really do consumer products. And it could be that it's crypto related and we don't do crypto. And sometimes those founders are so hyper-focused on me and the Fraziers that they waste too much time trying to sell me on something that I am not able to fund because we are not the right firm to do it. And at the point where it's just in the wrong vertical or it's at the wrong stage of the company, there's nothing I can do to fund it. So what they need to do, and what the smart ones do, is they figure out pretty quick, like, hey, is this even in the realm of something you could fund? Or I say, honestly, no, it's not something I could fund. But what the smart ones realize is that all the funding sources are interconnected. We know everyone. And they say, okay, well, who is funding pre-revenue companies? Who is funding consumer products? And I'll be like, oh yeah, Convoy, Starship, Kickstart sometimes does those. And so the smart ones will just ask for referrals or introductions, and so they sometimes get so hyper focused on getting my money that they need to take a little step back and say, well, what do you think? Or what would you do if you were me? Or who should I be talking to? And we all know each other, so I think they would get a lot further. And if they don't start with me, who they can start with are their friends who've already are running a successful company. So if you're a first-time founder, say, well, my cousin or this guy I went to school with, his company seems to be doing pretty well. Go to them and say, who funded you? And they might be willing to make an introduction. And who do you know? And I would just work the social network and hone in and kind of find your way to the right funding source that actually can fund you. Because we're not all the same. And sometimes you might think a fund can fund you, but they're at the end of their fund life cycle and they don't have any money to deploy right now. So I wouldn't take it personally. I would just try to maneuver my way and ask for help and introductions to find the right people for you to work with.
Beautiful insights and great recommendation from both of you, from the strategy of sequentially earning trust through an external communication system to actually asking, instead of being so close to the problem, to distance and say, hey, Kendall, if we're not the right fit, who would you recommend? I think that's very rational thinking that doesn't happen when they're so oxygen starved and so desperate. They get emotionally sort of constipated in their ability to think outside of the box. Right on.
Yeah.
With that said, I've got two questions for both of you, Scott or Kendall. Number one, they have now got investment, and they may or may not have a board. But they certainly have investors to report to. What have you seen the successful founders do in managing those investors or a board versus those who don't? What have you learned about how best to advise these founders once you've got these people in your camp? Because sometimes it's intimidating that now they have another source of a godlike entity who can dispense more money or not that they have to appease. At the same time, they want to run their business the way they want to, and yet they second guess themselves. And so sometimes you've got another emotionally constricted relationship, not because of the investors, but because the founder is frozen in fear. I see that happening a lot. What advice would you give?
I know, here I'll answer first because I've got an answer ready. I really like some of them will set an update schedule, and just every month they'll give us a short update via email, and it will just, and it's not sugar coated. It just says one section is what's going well, and it's not wordy. It's just very by the bones. Added 15K ARR this month, sold these big deals, excited about this. They don't care how it sounds or how it reads. It's just very much, it's just a real quick and dirty description, and it says what's not going well. And they just list out like churned this client, this person said they didn't like this was bad. And so they say something that's good, they say something that's bad, and they put at the bottom and ask, and they say what you can help us with. And they're just very specific, like, I would like an introduction to someone who works in marketing for registered investment advisors. And they're very specific with their ask, and they just have one or two asks. And this same email goes out to like 20 or 30 people. So I'm not the only one getting it. And I might not be able to help with their ask, but the ask is just like one or two bullet points, and they ask for that. And that makes me feel good, like I'm getting a full and complete picture. There's good, there's bad, and there's some asks that they need. So that's what I like. And then it's less intimidating if they just have it on a schedule. They know they're going to do it. And also, I feel the fear doesn't grip you as much if you've been upfront and honest about the challenges. Then you're not leading the investor down a wrong path all the way. And so if you're just getting the good and the bad every month, it's not as intimidating, and the investors like it. But you have to realize the investors are busy. They don't know as much about your business as you do. So you want to keep it really high level and not worry too much about how it's worded, and don't make it too flowery. Just give them the raw and dirty update. And then if you're smart, you want to tweak it a little bit, like my dad was saying earlier, where you're telling a story, you're predicting the future a little bit, you're laying this groundwork for this is the next big thing. So you want to tease them with a little bit of and this is the next cool thing that should be coming down the pipe next month. And that way, when you deliver on it, it gives you some awesome credibility to have said, yeah, I said we were going to add 3 new clients last month, and guess what? We did get them. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would add one thing. Most of the VC firms have a larger office than they need. So they may have little offices around the outside, or they may just have a bullpen area in the middle. And our office has that. And so a founder might consider asking if they're appropriate size, can we come over and get some free office space for the next 6 months? And it not only provides free office space, but it makes you one of the family. I mean, it's much harder to turn down requests that come from somebody that's in your office every day and that you see every day. Plus, you just know them intimately. So if they're achieving success, they'll come in every day and they'll tell you, I got this new contract, I got this, I got that. So don't be afraid to ask if you can share their office space.
Wonderful. Space. My second question is all about revenue. Everything is about revenue, whether you get the right person, the right product market fit, the timing, whatever. And invariably, the product itself launches well, but the iterative improvements to the product to keep current, to solve the right problems gets neglected. And I've seen too many start off with a great acceleration and then they level out and the modest gains after that because they haven't invested enough in product. Are you seeing the same? What advice would you give along that whole concept of investing in product, and what proportion of the budget should they be putting out of engineering or marketing or product into constantly improving their allocation to experiment for the next kick up the slope of improvement?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Benoy. That's one of the biggest mistakes a founder can ever do, is to not invest enough in the product. If you can afford to, forget about, anyway, selling is nice too. Revenues are nice. It's nice to get customer feedback, but putting money into the product is absolutely critical. In the long run, it doesn't matter what you do in the first 5 years if eventually your product is second rate or third rate, especially what we do, which is primarily software as a service, where it's a winner take all thing. The best product gets 80% of the market, and second best gets 20, and nobody else gets any market share at all. So yeah, absolutely critical.
When I look at seed stage companies, I do look to see literally what they've spent on engineering versus sales and marketing. And it's a quick way to say, wow, only 10% of their headcount is working on the product for like a company with $1 million in revenue. And you're like, wow, that's a huge red flag. And that way, so I always check. I haven't thought about if there's a hard and fast rule, but it seems like it ought to be 60% maybe should go into the product and the engineering at least. It feels like more than half of your headcount, at least, and I mean, it changes over time, but at least up to the first $1 million or $2 million in revenue, I would say it should be a simple majority, if not an outright big majority, should be going into engineering and product development. I will say one of our larger portfolio companies is Filevine, and they're worth well north of $1 billion now. And I was surprised to hear that their chief product guy, he's the brother of the CEO, is still, he described to us how he still personally works with clients on every new product that they develop, and he never outsources that. And he has dozens and dozens of people working for him now. It'd be pretty easy for him to let somebody else have that direct client interaction, but he still is hands-on. Every new product that they develop, he is on the phone asking how it went. He's highly, highly involved. And then once he gets a product launch, he turns that over to his team to maintain and to incrementally build on. But when they launch something groundbreaking and new, he never outsources that. And I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe once you hit a couple $100 million in valuation is about the time you stop. And he was pretty adamant that you never stop. So that was surprising to me. So
That's cool.
That may explain why their sales are so high over time, prolonged investments. I truly believe in that. Thank you, Scott, for also confirming, both of you, with good insight. We're about to wrap up, but
one question, like
Yeah.
just a follow up. Scott, you said, in your business, like if you're the leader, 80% takes the business. If a founder found themselves, they are not the best, they are the second and third one. And with the success rate, the companies you invest, probably a lot of them are like this, right? So
Yeah.
what is the advice there? Is the advice, the two things that I can think of is pivot, or find yourself a niche, because Scott, you mentioned earlier, you have to be better than the competition probably in certain areas. So just focus area that you can carve yourself out a corner in the market and just be better there. Like, what is the advice? Maybe there's other things that they can do.
dang,
So
I'm sorry you already, I was gonna say find a niche. So I'm glad you said that. So one of our better companies is Opinion, and a few years ago, they did find themselves playing second fiddle to Podium, where they were doing review generation and software feedback. And they were just going after, they were doing all the same things that Podium did, but on a smaller scale, and just playing second fiddle there. And it was kind of working out. They had slow growth, but they were never, Podium was $1 billion company. They were never going to catch up to them. And so they just found a really solid niche in multifamily apartments. And so they took their software and they did all the integrations with property management software that Podium was never going to do. And they tweaked their product so it was just completely turnkey and automatic. If you were a property manager or a property owner, Opinion would just work out the gate. It did exactly what you needed. It didn't need all this customization, and they're killing it. They're doing really well. So cool. I think you're right to just find a smaller niche and just do your best there. And then your product can be the best.
Yeah. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much. Thank you, Kendall, for joining us as soon as you could. Scott, you're a hoot, and it was great to see you again, my friend. Thank you both for your gracious time allocation. Things are so busy, and we really appreciate the wise counsel. And collectively, thank you for being local to Utah. Myself, Ike's in Orange County, for having helped so much of this environment that we now get to benefit from, and all the successive companies that have been spawned from prior investments. So thank you to the Frazier family for having made such a big dent in our universe here. Thank you. Thank you for all your wise counsel. We'll let you know as soon as this is posted. And for all of you listeners, please join us again when you can see the caliber of people that we have who are kindly dispensing such great wisdom as you pursue your journey as a first-time founder. We're now going to wrap things up. We'll see you next time. And thanks again for helping us with the rest.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.